Today on the OnStage Blog Theatre Podcast, we are diving into the founding fathers of our country, and it's not by Hamilton. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the OnStage Blog Theatre Podcast. And we're really excited today. We have a fun episode that we are going to be talking about one of our founding fathers. And we're not talking about Hamilton. We're talking about our first president of the United States, George Washington, and the fact that he was a super theater nerd. Who knew?
Certainly not me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this. I am theater critic Rachel Wagner, and Chocolate Cooler is here.
So when Rachel messaged me about George Washington being a theater super fan, I was like, wait, what now? And then I did a deep dive on it and was fascinated because when I think of presidents in theater, our late great President Lincoln, I think of him because he was shot in the theater. George Washington, I was like, I just think of him as like the first president, military man. I was not thinking of him as a fellow theater nerd.
Yeah. So the reason how I became aware of this is that I watched the Young Washington movie, which I'm right now, at least I'm embargoed on, but I did very much enjoy it, and it was very interesting to me to learn about young Washington. So I spent some time in Mount Vernon. I grew up in Maryland. I was somewhat aware of, obviously everybody knows who George Washington is, but about his life, interested in his life. But I really didn't know anything about the younger part of his life. And that was very interesting to me. And so it inspired me to obviously only take any movie with a historical movie with a grain of salt. And so it inspired me to learn more. And so I started reading this great book about George Washington by Ron Chernoff. And Ron Chernoff is actually the person who wrote the book that inspired Hamilton.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Yes. So like he's he's great, and this is such a great book. It is absolutely gripping. It is fascinating. Like if you think, okay, historical books, that's going to be boring. It's not. It's written in such an engaging way. He had such a fascinating life. But one of the things that stood out to me is that how much George Washington loved going to the theater and loved theater. It was really interesting. So I thought, hey, let's talk about it.
He was one of us. Let's be real. When it comes to the theater, George Washington was one of us. And it's so fascinating to think about how this isn't something that's talked about when we're talking about his persona or, what he was like. And at the time with theater, it was morally questionable. Like people thought of theater as morally questionable at this time.
Yeah, because if you think about it, it wasn't that far in the distance that you were talking about Puritanism. You're talking about some of these real strict moral codes that were still kind of a part of a lot of the fabric of the culture and the time. And so it was interesting looking back and sort of researching 18th century theater, because there's not that much that I was hoping that there would be some stuff that maybe I'd seen or heard about, but all of it is almost all of it is really obscure that I'd never heard of. But that was also kind of interesting, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think, Rachel, you make a really great point. But I think a lot of people, myself included, when you think about history, there's this, is this going to be boring? Is it because we're sort of raised in a school system that unless you have an incredible teacher, which there are many incredible teachers, and some of us are lucky enough to have them for history, it's sort of unpacked to us as something that is boring or removed. We don't talk about the connections it has for everyday life. The fact that like these are the incredible stories that our country, our world was built on, but it's not done in a way that makes it exciting or frankly like sexy to dive into.
It's true.
When there's plenty of fodder for it to be really exciting.
Well, and also so much that you have these days, particularly on YouTube and places like that, feels so propagandish. It's through such a lens that it's hard to trust, kind of what they're saying about history. So it just makes you kind of, at least makes me kind of wary of the whole endeavor to even go down that road. But whether it's whatever perspective the historian is coming from, it doesn't feel objective, or at least an attempt to be objective. And in this, at least with this book with Washington, Ron Chernow, it feels very, very well researched, and it doesn't feel like you are getting like George Washington propaganda. Like he's very open about like the flaws. Very open about obviously slavery being the
Yeah.
biggest problem. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that sometimes turns people off too. Is the feeling like, okay, I'm gonna get like American propaganda or whatever history you're looking into.
Totally. And I think there's something really interesting with that as well, and what you're delving into is that it sounds like this look at George Washington, this was coming from the perspective of wanting to tell an accurate story, looking for truth rather than looking for like, oh, this is what I want to convey about this
Yeah,
person so that we feel a certain way about him. It's like I want to bring the truth to light, and then you can
yeah,
just take that information in, because yeah, we can never like it. That's the thing about our complicated history, especially with George Washington. It's like, yeah, a founding father, but also like slavery is like like a blight in American history that we're
yeah,
still recovering from and probably
yeah.
never will.
And this Ron Chernow, I mean, he won the Pulitzer Prize for this book about Washington, so it's not like I'm the only one to say it's a good book. But he also, I'm excited now to read his. He has a book on Mark Twain. He has a book on General Grant, President Grant. He has a book on John D. Rockefeller, and of course Hamilton. His book on Alexander Hamilton, which inspired Lin-Manuel Miranda. So yeah, he's pretty cool. And but yeah, in like I said, in the book, he talks quite a bit about George Washington in theater. He says, and this is in his early years. He says, as he experienced the first stirrings of an abiding passion for theater, he read Joseph Addison's Cato, a paean to Republican virtues that he quoted repeatedly throughout his life. And this is interesting because I tried really hard to find this play. I thought there might be some staging that you find on YouTube or something. Nothing.
Right,
There was
right.
nothing. There was like an audiobook of it, but this was evidently a real favorite of his, was this play Cato. He said it was his favorite play. And this is written by Joseph Addison in 1712, so it wouldn't have been that old. It would have been about
Yeah.
50 years old when he read it, when he saw it. It is based on the events of the last days of Marcus Porcius Cato Uticinus. Sorry, I'm butchering that. Better known as Cato the Younger.
Hmm.
95 to 46 BC, a Stoic whose deeds, rhetoric, and resistance to the tyranny of Julius Caesar made him an icon of republicanism, which is so interesting because that's what the American government became, as a republic. So it's interesting. That's what inspired him.
Hmm.
Virtue and liberty. Addison's play deals with many themes such as individual liberty versus government tyranny, republicanism versus monarchism, logic versus emotion, and Cato's personal struggle to hold his beliefs in the face of death. And I think that's fascinating to learn that was his
Yeah.
favorite play.
Yeah. And also, it's this thing of like, okay, the thought of him having a favorite play, like he was consistently seeing theater enough to have a favorite play. Like I
Yeah,
had read that the night before his first inauguration, he had attended a performance of The Conscious Lovers. I'm like, okay, like the night
yeah.
before your inauguration, like that's what we're doing. Like, love that for him.
Yeah, and it wasn't only these serious plays like Cato. He also liked a romp, a good comedy, and he says that it says here that Washington didn't tell funny stories, he responded when others did. He was particularly pleased with the jokes, good humor, and hilarity of his companions. Washington was also more unbuttoned at the theater. You would seldom see a frown or smile on his countenance. His air was serious and reflecting, wrote one observer. Yet I have seen him in the theater laugh heartily. Which I just love that. That's so fun.
And I
It just
think it's
makes
so, yeah,
it makes him
no, no,
feel
it's
like a
exactly
real
it.
person, you know?
And it also shows the power of theater and what we can do with theater. Like you think you know something about someone, and then all of a sudden, you get them in the theater and you're seeing a whole different side of them, which I think is
Yeah.
really, really incredible. Like my family, they grew up supporting me, but like they're not a big theater family, they're more a sports family. But I took them to see Magic Bird when it was on Broadway, and they were all so emotional. And it was so
Yeah.
incredible to see something that they were interested in being represented. I mean, that show came and gone. It was there and it was gone. It flew in and flew out. But I think it meant something to a lot of people. And that is what is cool. It's like finding the audience that resonates with that work and someone who appears to be a certain way. Then when they're just like tickled at the magic and delight of the theater.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think my parents are not big media people, and so I don't get to see sort of their reaction to media often. But there have been a number of times when I have taken them to a play or something, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Like it's because my mom's actually an artist, and
Yeah.
sometimes I forget that because she can be quite traditional in her views and things, and I'll take her to something and her insight and also just the way she responds to the visuals of something will be I'm like, oh yeah, she's an artist. Like you forget certain sides of people, and then their insight into the theater can be really can help you get to know the people in your life better.
Absolutely. And there's conversations that you have based on things that you see in the theater that might have never otherwise come up, which I
Yeah,
think is a really incredible thing to have with people. Like it opens you up in ways that you could have never imagined on your own, but yet a
yeah.
piece of theater can do that.
Yeah, here it says here. Among the chief diversions of Washington's social life was the theater. During stays in Williamsburg, he attended everything from concerts to waxworks to puppet shows, though nothing matched his sheer delight in a good play. Many scholars have noted the abundant theatrical imagery in his writings, as when he advised a young relative that he was about to enter upon the great theater of life. And I just love it. And actually, I thought when I read that, I thought of you because you talk about how you almost prefer plays over musicals.
Yeah,
George
yeah.
Washington would have been your hang.
You're like, hey, dude, you want to go? You want to go see a
Yeah,
play?
yeah. You would have had a great time together. Who would have thought? Yeah, the recurrence of such metaphors says something not only about Washington's love of the theater, but about his awareness of the dramatic nature of his life and the eventful times through which he passed. He would play many roles in his lifetime, always with consummate flair. That he turned to the theater imagery when aiming at a high rhetorical pitch suggests that he saw himself as the protagonist of a great epic, dazzling an audience that had its eyes peeled on his every action. Which is just great imagery. I mean, you can see that this book is a great book, right? I mean,
Oh, definitely.
well
Also,
written,
I
that paragraph right there.
very well written. Also, I love because it makes me think, did he want to be a performer? How did
Yeah.
Washington want to be a theater guy?
Well, and I think there was theatricality in a lot of his leadership, which probably is
Hmm.
part of the reason why people liked him so much. And I kept thinking when I was watching the movie and reading this book, that great line in Hamilton when he says, it must be nice to have Washington on your side. And you think that everybody wanted to be with Washington, everyone wanted to be a part of him because he it sounds like he was an entertaining guy.
Yeah,
He knew how to
exactly.
control it. He knew how to command a room.
Yeah, and I think that I'm sure that, when you're in it, well, I don't know because like we're living our lives in these moments, but like we look at George Washington, it's like that is history and that's this epic history that's happening. But he loved Shakespeare, like he
Yeah,
loved
he did.
Hamlet. And the fact that he's sitting there being like, wow, look at that. Like that was an epic time when he was like creating his own epic time, like with the birth of our country. It's a
Hmm.
really fascinating thing to think about.
Yeah, it really is. So a couple more plays that he particularly liked. Like I said, Cato was his favorite that he saw often in Virginia theaters. He says he preferred a seat in the pit, which I love that. In spite of his social class, Virginia and Maryland seem to have been the two colonies that never banned theaters as immoral and a public nuisance. So I kind of like that. He was hanging out in the pit with the people.
He's like, you know what? I don't care if it's morally questionable. I don't care. Like, I don't need to be sitting in a box seat. I
Yeah.
just want to be hanging.
Yeah. Loved a play called Romp or a Cure for the Spleen. This was a British comic opera. And I think because probably they were responding to some of the Puritan ideas that I think maybe why a lot of these plays you don't hear about them now is because I think they were real creatures of their time. They were real. I don't know if they. It's hard to know because I haven't seen them, but I don't know if they had sort of those that timeless quality of something like a Shakespeare or the Renaissance, type of writing, which would be a little bit more timeless.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's
Specifically responding to what they had before, as opposed to,
yes.
you know, I don't know.
Yeah. And it is curious to think about how they were developing the art form of theater during this time and what
Yeah.
kinds of play. And like, even I had read that when they knew Washington was going to be the audience, sometimes they would add like patriotic songs and they
Yeah,
would do
that's probably
things that
true.
would specifically, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that I can imagine they're like, okay, the president's here. Let's get patriotic, baby.
Yeah, another one that he was a fan of is called The London Merchant. This is by George Lelo. It's a tragedy that follows the downfall of a young apprentice due to his association with a prostitute. It is remarkable for its use of middle and working class characters. And this was first performed in 1731, and it became one of the most popular plays of the century. So that was I never heard of that. Another one that he loved was called The Orphan or the Unhappy Marriage, domestic tragedy written by Thomas Ottaway in 1680. And it says that it's written in blank verse. It is the play that made Ottaway famous. The Orphan remained a stock piece of stage until the 19th century. And so that was a favorite. The Orphan or the Unhappy Marriage. Sounds like there were a lot of tragedies. Another one, a curious set of figures, refers to a traveling 18th century puppet and mechanical theater show operated by showman Peter Gardner. These richly dressed 4 foot tall figures were designed to appear upon the stage as if alive and perform pantomimes alongside other curiosities. So that was something that he liked. And then Washington saw plays generally staged by one of two companies, the American Company and the Virginia Company.
Mm.
And another favorite of his was one about Columbus. Columbus or World Discovered, 1792, historical play written by the English dramatist Thomas Morton. It premiered at the Theatre Royal, Covent Garden in London, and its narrative romanticized the expedition of Christopher Columbus and the broader age of European discovery. So obviously that would be something that he would like because he was founding a country, being a part of it. So it
Right.
would make total sense why you would like something like that. And the only one of all of these ones that I saw that I knew of is The School for Scandal. That's
Yes.
probably, I think, the most famous play. And this is by Richard Brinsley. It was first performed in London at Drury Lane Theatre in 1777. And I really regret the University of Utah did this, I think last year. They did the School for Scandal,
Hmm.
and I so regret that I didn't see it. I should have, but because it's
I'm
not
sure
performed
you
a
were seeing
ton.
something else at the
Yeah,
time.
I probably was. But this is a comedy of manners, satirizing the gossip, hypocrisy, and social climbing of London's high society through witty dialogue and intricate plots, most famously the screen scene where Lady Teazle is discovered hiding in Joseph Surface's room, exposing the character's true natures. The play follows the scheming Lady Snarenell and the virtuous but flawed Surface brothers, Joseph and Charles, as their reputations are tested by returning Uncle Sir Oliver, who tests them in disguise to find the more worthy heir. And I think that this would have really rang true for Washington because
Hmm.
one of the things that kind of inspired him to become a rebel, basically, was because of the lack of respect that he was able to get from the British, and that they
Yes.
wouldn't give him the military positions he felt he deserved. They wouldn't give him the respect that he felt he deserved. And so I think a play like this, which is satirizing that society, would be something that he would really like.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, Rachel. I also thought of you when I was reading about um George Washington's experience and interactions with the theater because apparently he kept a journal of each show that he went to. And
Yes.
although he wasn't reviewing or blogging at the time, because that wasn't happening, he still was writing his thoughts and impressions about each show in a journal, which I thought was a very cool thing.
Yes. Yeah, on the Mount Vernon website, they talk about that he kept a diary entry of every single play that he saw, and but they don't actually list those. They only list about 10, 13. I was like, I wish that I could get like a spreadsheet. That would be so
Can we
interesting.
get our hands on that? Like, what the heck? My
Yeah.
goodness.
School for Scandal is the only one, at least according to the Mount Vernon website, that he saw that he noted three times that he saw. Which again, yeah, I did think about that. I'm like, oh look, he re-saw plays just like me.
I mean, he still, look, I'm sorry. I don't think he saw 700 plays in a few. So, like, he can just take a seat as far as I'm concerned, but he would give you a run for your money.
Yeah. So here's some that in his diary that he had: the London Merchant that we talked about, the Inconstant or the Way to Win Him, the Recruiting Officer, a comedy, a Word to the Wise, the West Indian, Cross Purposes, Cato, Love in a Camp, or Patrick in Prussia. Like I said, none of these I'd even heard of. Then The Tempest. So he did see a bunch of Shakespeare. And you can see a lot of those themes, especially in something like a King Lear, in
Absolutely.
his, because his presidency, I mean, he had already done so much
Mhm.
for the country and for the people, and he was so loved that something like a King Lear would probably feel so somewhat easy to connect with in its
Yeah.
themes,
Yeah.
you know,
Absolutely.
and the Tempest, that would have themes of a sort of an older, even though he wasn't that old when he was, I think he was, oh,
So funny. The founding fathers all seem so old to me, even though I'm sure they
so
weren't.
he was 57 when he was inaugurated president. So like pretty old. And not only, I mean, that's not that old, but in that time, like it was a little, but also like his father had died before 57. His half brother that he was very close with, Lawrence, he had died. In fact, the only time that George Washington ever left North America was to go to Barbados with his brother to try to help him recover from I can't remember if it was dysentery or he
Oh
was
my goodness.
sick. Yeah, and and so it's just I think it's kind of interesting. And the the George Washington, not only in his love of theater, but he also knew how to sell a moment, which is probably something that he learned from watching all these plays. But I mean, he would go out there in and he's known for having bullet holes all through his uniform. And people would be like, "How did you not die?" And I'd be like, "What?"
I would love if he was like, no, I just need the theatricality of this moment. Like he wasn't even
Yeah,
shot. And he's like, okay, this has just got to be a big
yeah.
splash. I'm telling a story. Look.
Well, and it's also incredible how he was able to keep all of these very strong personalities all somehow working together and keep them at bay. When you've got Hamilton, very strong personality, obviously. You've got James Madison, who I mean, all these people were brilliant, but also, and then Thomas Jefferson, of course, was very was a very, very a passionate, strong person as far as their political opinions, but keep them all focused on the main goal and keep it. And one of the things I never really thought about before until reading this book is how long it really was. I don't know why I never thought about that. So the Revolutionary War was 9 years.
It's wild to think about it.
I
It's
didn't, I mean,
wild to think about
isn't
it.
that crazy?
Yeah, I don't think I really like metabolize that information either.
Yeah, because they would actually only be fighting for a small amount of months. And then they would basically, like, in the winter, they would just kind of camp out. And that's when you have horrible things like the Valley Forge and other things like that were brutal to survive, but they weren't
Right.
actively like battling for most of those months. That and so and often because they had militias and they had soldiers that were only contracted for short periods of time. So the soldiers would literally come, they would fight, and then they would go and farm their land, and they would do other things, and then they would come back, and if they were lucky, they would come back, and I don't know. That just kind of blew my mind. I never really thought about the fact that they had to keep going for it was 9 years.
I mean, it is wild to think about because I think when I think about war, I'm thinking about like short, intense, horrific bursts, but
Yeah,
you're thinking about it being a sprint rather than a marathon.
yeah, yeah. It started in 1775 and went on until 1783. So I guess 8 years, but I don't know. That just really was eye-opening to me. That and I do love that about histories when you can when the people become people that
Yes.
as opposed to just a stat
Yes.
like that, like, oh, here's this battle, here's this thing. But I mean, 9 years, that's a long time.
Yeah, I think it's nearly a decade of
Yeah.
someone's life and what happens during that time and what that does to your body and your spirit and your mind. I mean, it's almost unfathomable.
I mean, you understand why people loved him as much as they did. If they
Yeah.
had, if he had literally been leading, guiding, been the symbol of strength for that long, and then he was the first president. Is and there's a quote by one of the leaders of my faith where he says that few men have been granted unlimited power and used it so gently.
Oh, that's a beautiful quote.
And I think that that
That is
is true about
beautiful.
Washington
Yes.
because
Yes.
he could have become a monarch if he wanted. He could have been become a tyrant if he wanted. He could have become an ideologue if he wanted. And I'm not saying he was perfect. I really am not. I'm just I do think that there is something to the fact of that he was for somebody like him, he was a pretty humble guy.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Well, and
he could have been it could have been a disaster.
it's very interesting. You're right, how that could have changed the course of history as we know it. You
Yeah.
know, like you said, becoming a monarch or becoming like, what would that have done? to our country, what would that have been? I'm also very interested in, I know it says that Martha did go to theater with him sometimes. I'm like, what were her faves?
Yeah, that would be
Like, I
interesting to
wish we
know.
knew.
That's true.
She wasn't, I mean, I wish that she kept a journal. Maybe she did, but we just don't know.
Yeah, that would be really interesting to know.
I'm like, girl,
Because
did she like romance? Was Shakespeare her fave? What was going on there?
yeah, and because there's actually it's not as much. What is that? Hold on just a second. Um, There's a really lovely little book. It's not as much about Martha Washington. I think, she's talked about a little bit, but it's a book called Founding Mothers, The Women Who
Oh,
Raised Our Nation by Cokie Roberts. She was a journalist.
yes,
And
Cookie Roberts.
it is a delightful book, and it focuses on Dolly Madison is a big one, and I mean, she's the one who famously saved the in the fire. She saved a lot of the historical documents and other things like that and she saved them. She was fleeing, and she was really famous for gathering and hosting events and different things like that. Being the because it was the first time that I think it was the first time that Washington D.C. was a real, like, I mean, the White House would have been new, and
Yes.
hosting those kinds of. She was like a lot of people say that Dolly Madison was like the first real
Yeah.
first lady, and to
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
invent that position. But anyway, the book, it talks about Abigail Adams, talks about Martha Washington, Phyllis Wheatley, just some of these really, really, really cool people. So if you want to learn more about the women of the founding, that is a good way to go.
Oh, that's so exciting to have a book like that to sort of get parts of history that we have heard of but not delved into in a way that feels like it's deep enough.
Yeah, and written again in a very readable style. You don't feel like you're reading something heavy or boring. So that's, I think, everything that I had prepared about Washington. But I just thought it was cool to have this sort of unexpected point of connection with one of the founders of our country, and that it turned out he was like a little theater buff, theater
He was a
nerd.
theater buff,
He
and the
was.
fact it's honestly so interesting to think about the fact that there's what is conveyed to us either in our history classes or in the media is, of course, it's never the full story, but when you have a historian and a writer like this who's willing to do a deep dive and look at things that are difficult, like things about Washington that are awful, but also aspects of George Washington that are fascinating and interesting and uplifting and fun and funny. Like that is when you really get a full picture of a life, and I think that is what's the most important for storytelling purposes. Like
Yeah,
that people are complex, and to have a book like this to really delve into that, I think is so important.
yeah. Well, let us know what you think. I'll be really curious for any feedback on this. If the topic interests you, if you've read Chernow's book, if this is new information, or if you have any insight, I would love to hear more about this, because I thought it was really interesting, and I always appreciate that the folks here at OnStage Blog and you are always up for any of my crazy ideas. They're like, let's go for it, let's do it.
I'm grateful, Rachel, because you'll like text me something and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so fascinated by this. Like, what is this? I need to know. And like, honestly, who would have thought? And also, I have to say, you never know the trajectory of American theater likely would have been very different if we would have had a first president who, like the Puritans, was like, theater's
Yeah, you're
back
right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's very true. Well, where can people find you, follow you?
at Declan Collier on Instagram.
And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews all over the place, and also rachelsreviewstheater.com. Check that out. And also, you can find me at Hallmarkies Podcast and lots of fun stuff over there. And make sure that you're following OnStage Blog all over the place. They have like daily articles, really good stuff, good
Oh,
discussion,
they're
especially over
so
on
good.
Facebook. Yeah,
Me
really good. You
sometimes.
definitely want to be following them and subscribe to the newsletter. And we would appreciate that very much. And check out the playlist with all of our episodes of the podcast. And if you're listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. We would really appreciate that. And if you're watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We would really appreciate that. And thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Bye.